So nice to actually be in the same room with you, Liz, and actually be able to meet for the first time after, working together for almost a year.
Yeah, well, Sam, I think I first met you, I think it's been just a year, but of course you have a really long history with Mockingbird because you used to be a network rep and you've been around.
Oh, gosh, yeah, it was a long time ago. Really being a network rep back then was, I don't think too different from how it is now. Actually, even being being Seattle's first chapter leader and being there when they created the network and, in a lot of ways, that's my baby, and so being able to come back and help to support the next generation of leaders is beyond impactful. I think easily my proudest moment of this past legislative session was helping to be a part of the passage of House Bill 1219.
It has been such a long journey to get to this point, but you were there kind of at the beginning. So I'm wondering if you can talk about what did it feel like to be among the first to sort of highlight this as a need?
Yeah, being a part of it at the beginning versus kind of seeing it to kind of get past this past legislative session has been a really unique experience. We really just wanted to elevate the conversation back then. We knew that this was a conversation that we need to have. I specifically remember going in and chatting with lawmakers and during my testimony asking them who in here would send their kid into court without legal representation, right? And not a hand in the room was raised. And even then, just starting to have those conversations where it clicked in for legislators that this is a problem, this is an issue that we need to address. And sometimes that's where you have to start. It not only was deeply personal to me as an individual who experienced the system, but also as an advocate, as somebody who put their blood, sweat, and tears and wrote articles and met with lawmakers, when I was a teenager, to now be able to come back and to add new levels of expertise to the work. But easily it was my proudest moment during this past legislative session.
It's incredible how the idea just kept evolving over the years and the incremental changes that happened along the way. The research that was done, in 2017 when I started at Mockingbird, this idea was already nearly a decade old. And we came back again saying, all young people should have attorneys in this incredibly impactful court proceeding. And the legislature said, well, let's test that idea. Let's do a study, let's do a pilot and see what the impact is. And lo and behold, something that young people, again, have been saying and asking for was borne out in the data that was collected through this pilot, showing that young people who are represented by trained attorneys, by high-quality attorneys, are more likely to be reunified. They're more likely to be placed with family during their experience in care. It was exciting to get that data. It was also, again, this moment where the research catches up to what young people have been saying for a long time. But it was another piece of kind of building that narrative that you talked about helping people understand kind of why this is important.
Yeah, I think the direct impact really is that we don't have to send young people into these court proceedings by themselves. I can personally speak to how terrifying it was to just be a 12-year-old going into court and how intimidating all the players and factors can be. And so just off the sheer fact that we won't be able to send young people into these situations alone and they'll have someone that is going to bat for them and really, truly speaking on the young person's stated interest.
And to imagine being young, to potentially have experienced trauma, being separated from parents, being separated maybe from my siblings. I can't imagine walking in and not even knowing where to turn, and not knowing what was being said and not knowing what could happen, what the possible outcomes would be. Through House Bill 1219, every young person will at least have somebody sort of by their side as they go through that experience, and who is there to zealously represent their interests. Before my time, Mockingbird youth advocates worked on extended foster care, right? And you think about today, when turning 18 is no longer that same kind of scary cliff that it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago, before extended foster care was the norm. Now it's the norm to have extended foster care and to have that ongoing support. And it really, to me, kind of epitomizes Mockingbird's approach to systems change, that it's really about the young people coming behind in the system.
At the core of it all, none of us want to see other people experience the things that we did. I'm a recipient of systems, and not just child welfare, but various systems, the education system. My family's been impacted by the criminal justice system. And so for me, at a very early age, I saw the potential of legislative and systems change, and saw how that can help people in such a large scale way that, for me, it really made a lot of sense to jump into that work and to try to find a space there. I think the real importance of having a youth voice in this work is because that's really the most impactful thing on legislators. Someone with lived experience, that has way more impact than me bringing a data sheet or me coming in with, by the book what this piece of legislation is. The true impact is the stories, and so now coming back to be able to do this work is the focus for me is, again, how do we continue to get those voices uplifted and in front of the lawmakers who need to hear it most, because communities really are the ones who know what they need the most.
The other piece is just ideas that come from young people can't come from anyone else. And there are so many of our policy ideas would never have come up were it not for young people identifying them. And so I think there's always a need for those new ideas and the new experiences, and how a young person experiences child welfare now may be very, very different than 20 years ago.
I'm constantly reminded, as even someone who's supposed to be an expert, that when I hear from young people and hear their new ideas, that I could have never thought of these things. And so again, being able to have that someone with that closeness is really important.
I was talking to my mother-in-law, and she sort of asked me, so you guys always need to pass legislation? You didn't fix it already? And I think that is a question that comes up. Why haven't we fixed it all? Or why are there still things left to do? I'm curious how would you respond to that?
Things change, experiences change, dynamics change. What we know about child welfare has changed, and what we know about how we want to serve families has changed. And I think that, to me, that's almost even more important than the tangible policy shift or the policy change, because when you start to change the narrative and have people in power change the narrative, that's when I think you start to see things more impactfully.
We can pass laws and we can change policy, but that doesn't automatically transform the system by itself. It's that kind of accumulated weight of those policy changes that leads to practice change, that leads to culture change, that leads to this different way of doing things and of looking at things. And I think that is kind of why systems change work is such long-term work. The report card project that just wrapped up is really powerful, in part because it helps aggregate some of those experiences, and it sort of gives additional weight to say, actually, it's not just one person who had this experience, but collectively, this group of 219 people who responded to the survey and 63 people who did an in-depth interview, collectively, they said this about their experience. What was really striking to me is, we've made a lot of changes and a lot has happened, and there are some big things that haven't changed, and we can get lost a little bit in like, what's the next big thing? And sometimes we actually need to go back and just revisit, like, have we done the things that young people have asked for? And I think the report card illuminates a few different areas where we still have a lot of work to do, and where young people have been saying really similar things for quite a long time. And I don't think we should let ourselves off the hook for the work that hasn't been done and that needs to continue.
In the way so many things change, they also stay the same, right? And that we might have been able to, pass legal representation, House Bill 1219, or behavioral health supports for young people in homeless shelters, but then you also hear that young people still can't see their siblings, right? And it's like, it's always important to be able to even do that, like continuous quality improvement and going back and looking at what went wrong, what's going right. Did we actually implement this in the right way? And I think that that's why the Report Card Project is so impactful, because it really allows those who have lived it to be able to really tell you how it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember one particular time on 1219, we were prepping to have one of our big hearings, and I was trying to schedule with a young person who had agreed to participate, and I was excited, but it was really hard to actually schedule with her. And when we finally connected, I realized that she was calling me while also cleaning houses, because that is her job. And so she was calling me like while she's in the midst of her job, and she's also a single parent. And so she was balancing all of these things and trying to figure out, a time that would work in this incredibly busy life. I took a step back and realized that they're just balancing so much. And so I just have so much appreciation for all of our young people that are taking the time out of their lives to do this work.
Nothing but admiration and respect for that, for real.
One thing I think about with the system that's been built is because it has not started from young people and families and what they need. It is built on kind of a legacy of racism and colonialism. That's why we see the challenges that we see today, right? That's why we see this disproportionality in who comes into care. That's why we see this disproportionality in who experiences homelessness. So I think if I had a magic wand and I could just accelerate the work of just rooting out the systemic racism in the system, and the systemic oppression that results in young people who are LGBTQ being, not very well served by the system and really overrepresented. Again, in who's experiencing homelessness, who's experiencing foster care. I think that is kind of the key to rebuilding. I don't know, what would you do if you had a magic wand?
Yeah, for me, magic wand solution is, I think it's about, at the end of the day, providing young people and family with the support and services that they need, and that young people had like a loving situation regardless, no matter what, right? I think, the context for why young people end up in the care can be across the board. We know the systemic racism that plagues, Black and brown communities, and that, has them entered in the system at a higher rate than others. But I also see young people in rural communities who might be LGBTQ plus or Two-Spirit young people whose families chose not to support them. And they need support and they need love too, right? And that we want to make sure that we have whatever situation is best for the young people and the families to be able to get that support that they need. But in particular, making sure that all young people have love in whatever way that looks like, because I know the difference that can make, And sometimes all the other system factors in the world can be rectified if a young person just has someone that loves them in their corner.
So Sam, you're somebody who has invested a huge amount of your time and your talents into Mockingbird over the years, first as a network representative and now coming back as a lobbyist. I'm curious what you would say to others about why they should invest in Mockingbird.
I think really, of course, at the gate is finding ways to be able to kind of engage with us on our advocacy work, but also doing that research, doing that work, continuing to gain your own awareness and spreading that awareness out to your community members. And lastly, and one of the most easiest ways is just to be able to invest, right? Invest in Mockingbird, invest in our young people, and invest in the work that we're doing. I think investing in Mockingbird is also an investment in the true way it should be done, right? An investment in getting power sharing right. And while it's gonna sound cheesy and cliche, but an investment in someone like me, right? Like that at 16, I was able to testify in front of the Senate for the first time and have my eyes be opened to an experience that was really impactful for me. Then to be able to, go to school for that, and then come back as a lobbyist and not just be impacting child welfare, but impacting so many other policy areas at this time right now too.
Every legislative session, we have an incredibly powerful youth-led legislative agenda, and we need folks to contact their legislators, let them know that you care about youth homelessness, that you care about child welfare issues, and that you support what Mockingbird is working on. Reading the Mockingbird Times is a great way to learn more about those issues that resonate for young people at Mockingbird. What Mockingbird does so well is invest right along with young people in that long-term work. And so the community's investment in Mockingbird enables Mockingbird to invest long-term in these solutions and in young people.